And good evening, everybody, and welcome to another Deep Folking. I am your host, Dan, and tonight I am joined by, of course,
Brett, the one who hates doing these because they're terrible.
they're not terrible, you're just bad at them. And then I don't know who you are.
Yeah, I'm sorry. My name is Nathan. I'm representing Victor, and I wanted to jump in really quickly and just say that the views of this podcast do not necessarily represent the views of GFY LLC. So I would like our listeners to just proceed with caution. Again, my name is Nathan Graves, and I'll be joined today representing GFY LLC for Victor.
Wait, hold on.
Wait.
Do you work here?
Are you Victor's lawyer?
No, yeah. Victor, he hired me. He knew he wasn't going to be able to be here for this series of podcasts and deep folking, so he hired me, and I'm going to be here. It's basically just pretend like I'm Victor. Just pretend like I'm Victor, and I may butt in every once in a while just to make sure we're on the right path, the straight and narrow. But otherwise, I'm just going to be having a good time.
Oh, okay. So you're here to endorse all the legal and medical advice that we provide our listeners, right?
Again, the views of this podcast do not necessarily reflect the views of GFY LLC.
But the
Are you
legal
gonna do
and
that a
medical
lot?
advice.
Like,
I
is
just
okay.
might have to butt in just periodically, just to say, just to say, don't try this at home.
Okay.
oh,
But I
okay.
mean, we usually encourage our listeners to try this at home.
No. There's significant risks associated with trying anything that's represented
there's
on this
no-
podcast at home.
No risks involved in anything.
Yeah, I
Do
don't-
whatever you want. Drink as much as you want. Drive a little bit. Whatever it needs to be.
I'll try.
I don't like this.
I'll try to keep my interjections down to a bare minimum. But
man.
yeah.
I feel like
What
you
is your-
hate
what
my
is your-
gambling stuff.
Yeah, well, hold on. Before, what is? Do you have a background in this? Do you even care about folklore?
Oh no.
Like, what?
No. I responded to a Craigslist ad. I've been out of work for a while. My wife and I recently moved to the West Coast, and I was just looking for a job. And I saw this ad for GFY LLC. I thought it was some Goodfellas related sort of material, but it wound up being Go Folk Yourself. But you know what? I'm excited to sort of explore and see what you guys do. I will say I've never heard an episode of your podcast.
Awesome. This is
So
this
it's
is what
basic-
we look for.
All right, Dan, this is just like having Victor in the studio. I got it. Because I don't think Victor even pays attention to what he edits. Did you listen to Oregon?
God, it was abysmal. So yeah,
Man,
clearly you're
got him.
right on this. So, all right. Well, welcome, I guess. And so let's kick this bad boy off. I have a topic we're going to discuss today. I hope you guys are ready.
I'm very excited, and I can't wait to talk to this random contractor in lieu of Victor. I think he's going to add some valuable insights.
I'm restraining my excitement until I hear what the topic is about.
Okay.
But I'm
Okay.
cautiously excited.
I respect
Good.
that. I get that.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense to me. Obviously.
Well, what are we talking about?
Well, so tonight we are going to talk about what is the difference between a haunted tour and tragedy tourism. Tragedy tourism.
I would like to say that GFY LLC does not endorse terrorism.
Yeah, I think we could all get behind that contractor.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. That seems fair.
All right, so tragedy
But what is the
tourism
difference between tragedy
versus
tourism and haunted encounters or tours?
like a city ghost tour? Is that like
Sure. So, for example,
Okay.
I went on a ghost tour in New Orleans where we saw a house where there was a woman who was practicing voodoo in the basement and killing people, right? So, how much time needed to pass where that wasn't just people coming to gawk at the home where there was just recently murders and all of a sudden became like a, hey, go ahead and get drunk on Bourbon Street and then we're going to walk you down to a house where some murders happened a while ago.
feel like it's a easy 100 years needs to pass before it can be allowed to be a ghost tour and not a true crime tour.
Because like not to offend anybody, but like for example, think of the Pulse nightclub in Orlando,
Right.
right? People are going there taking pictures in front of it. There are like wooden walls like with memorials, things like that, and that is considered tragedy tourism.
Is that when you go to the scene of like a disaster or like horrific event to look at
Yes.
it? Like I don't understand. Like I live there and
Yes.
I've not gone to visit that because it would make me sad.
Of
so,
course.
so you might have butt in really quick. Is the question whether there's a certain amount of suspension of disbelief that has to happen to go on a ghost tour, whereas tragedy tourism, you're directly faced with actual tragedy, and so you think that there's a difference? That's where the
Kind of.
difference lies.
I think
That's
there's an
yeah.
element of I mean, there's obviously an element of tragedy in any ghost story. It wouldn't be a ghost story if nothing horrific had if there had not been a horrific event where one or more people
Sure.
died. You know.
Yeah. Well, I went on a ghost tour in Williamsburg, Virginia, and it's the colonial area of Williamsburg. So you've got a lot. Your 100-year requirement, Brett, has certainly been met by all of the houses that exist in that area, and they're original structures. So you're touring these original buildings that supposedly had, and the ghost tour, we would stop every once in a while, and the tour guide would tell us the story of what happened in there, and there was like a candle in the window, but there was no one in the house when they went in to, investigate, and that kind of like eerie sort of spooky ghost story. But and maybe this is because I'm a pragmatic sort of lawyer / representative, but I don't necessarily know that I buy into that, right? So I go into entertainment like that with a certain amount of, I'm just here to be entertained. I'm more here for the same reason I would go see a scary movie,
Absolutely.
Are you there for the theatrics of the tour guide as
Well-
much as you are of the locations themselves?
I will say in that case, I was disappointed by the tour guide, and it did significantly impact my enjoyment of the tour. So I think that after that tour, I realized my answer to that question is yes.
Well, so hold on, Brett, before you make the point you're going to make here, or unless it's directly related.
It is about ghost tours in general because I
Well,
fucking love ghost tours.
So do I, but this is my point. Like I'm going to use Pulse again for this moment. Let's say 100 years passes from that event.
Right. Okay. So this
What
is the year.
theatrics does the tour guide do to show? Like that's my point. When does it become a family antic and not a tragedy?
Oh, that's a good point. I mean, like a lot of the ghost tours that I've been on are predominantly in the South, like Savannah, Charleston. I've been to a
Right.
few in Tampa, and one of the only ones that I've been to up north were in Boston.
Salem.
and-
You didn't do Salem?
Oh, I've done. Yeah, I did. Salem. I actually went on a magic tour, which was actually pretty awesome. Which is not the same as a ghost tour because it was.
Oh, did you go to Ilvermorny?
No, I did not go to Ilvermorny. I did. I went. It was. I actually was there over Halloween, so there was an outside ritual, and we went through all the different witchcraft spots in the town, which is pretty cool.
How many Thunderbirds were in the crowd?
You know what? I
Ilvermorny?
could tell they were all a bunch of mugwumps. I believe is one of the other
Oh,
houses.
fucking hate
Or
mugwumps.
that damn cat one. I don't know. Ilvermorny is a wretched abortion of content, and no one should like it. I hate it. But that's not what this is about. I think that the commonality to all of these tours that I've been on is it's always like it culminates in a really, really fucking dark place. Like Savannah was like yellow fever epidemic, which if you don't know this, the yellow fever was like one of the worst epidemics that ever hit America, and like thousands and thousands of people died from that. But now it is all part of ghost tour culture there, because a lot of the locations are like old houses where like whole families were wiped out by the yellow fever epidemic. So I don't know. Maybe I don't know what it is that removes it from tragedy tourism into haunted tourism.
Well,
Any thoughts?
the observation I would make as well is that most of the ghost tour stories that I've been told, and I've only been on two. There's one in St. Augustine, and then the one in Williamsburg, Virginia. And almost all of the stories had some level of hearsay to them. They had been discussed locally before the story was made larger. No one was really 100% sure what happened. There was no certainty to it, and so the speculation of, well, maybe it was supernatural could be fun because you didn't know for certain that a woman was actually just murdered by, a mass murderer. That would be a lot less fun to talk about. than the potential
then-
of Supernatural.
So then, is it possible that in our current day and age, we will not be producing any more haunted events because everything is knowledge and less myth, right? Like, if something, if a mass murder happened in the 1700s, it's all hearsay. There's no
Sure.
videos, photos, documents that like prove what happened. It was literally just the like, I am the person living near this house. I heard screaming,
Yeah.
and then I saw this man run out with blood on his hands, and I assume he murdered.
One to interject, in Milwaukee, you can take a Jeffrey Dahmer related ghost tour. And he is, when did they catch him? They caught him 80s, like 70s or 80s. I'm not 100%. I'm not a true crime nerd. But let's suffice it to say it is very extreme late 20th century, where the people that would be our parents' generation would be very much alive and aware of what was going on with Jeffrey Dahmer. And that is now a ghost tour. It is very much possible that not only are his victims' immediate family members still alive, but also that the friends of his family members are also still alive. So
Yeah.
I don't.
But I feel like serial killers are kind of immune. I mean, I know there are victims, yes, but serial killers kind of grow their own myth and legend just by virtue of being a serial killer.
Right. But
Right, so
is
that's
that a
the
tragedy
tour of the-
or is that a ghost tour? Because it has elements of both. But I think that would also draw the true crime macabre crowd, in addition to
Yeah.
the like weirdo.
Well, yeah,
ghost
that's
crowd.
not bringing. I'm sure that's not bringing really the ghost crowd in the same way.
No, that seems more tragedy tour to me. That's
Yeah.
you being fascinated by some crazy tragic event that really happened and you know it really happened, which is why you want to go. You know, if I really want to go to places and experience that sort of secondhand, tragedy, I'm not going to go to places where it might just be that the locals made the story up. I'm going to go to places where I know these things sort of happen. So I think that might be where the line is sort of drawn. And then the other thing I was going to say is I think it is possible, potentially, that myth and legend and the supernatural still does sort of generate stories. And, there's more of these sort of little areas where there are haunted houses and there are ghost tours. They may still pop up because we still have places that, cite that they saw Bigfoot and there are UFO sightings and things like that. They're just not your more heavily populated areas of America. They're your more either backwater or just lesser populated areas.
Like a rural area is more
Yeah.
likely to have like cryptid
Are you-
activity.
well-
Well, if the hive mind of an area is able to agree together that house is haunted, then a legend can be born, right? If a collective of group of people can together begin that rumor that, oh, did you hear about the house down the street? Yeah, that house is haunted. That takes a small group of people. You get a city like Los Angeles, and that sort of legend isn't going to permeate.
I think
let me
that in
ask
a
you-
big city that it's more likely that a legend like that will permeate because most of the
Yeah.
places that I think predominantly have like walking or riding or whatever ghost tours may have are usually in a medium to larger size city.
But they weren't.
But
when-
those are classic haunted tours. Like
Right.
the tours in New Orleans are not based on like recent events. That's
Right.
what he's saying.
Yeah.
Is the collective hive mind currently would be in communities that are smaller and thus can essentially buy in quicker.
Maybe
Yeah.
what the elements of
Go-
the
ghost tours are moving to
story-
Alabama. Yeah, that's 20,
Let me ask you this real quick then, Nathan. Are your views on rural communities being dumb and able to digest nonsense also the views of Victor or GFY LLC?
GFY LLC does not necessarily condone stereotyping individuals.
I've often heard Victor stereotype Ethan for being
No,
a
no.
redneck.
Victor uses factual data and aggregates that data to make informed decisions and conclusions.
Like, his overalls. I get it.
Yeah. So,
They're always stained with berries.
And he's always barefoot.
but let me clarify that really quick. I don't think that rural areas are dumber and therefore more likely to believe something. I think anyone is likely to believe something supernatural if the group decides collectively that it's fun to believe that, or that it's good, it's okay to believe that. I just think it's more common there because those communities are smaller.
Maybe it takes a period of time to pass between when it is a collective community tragedy and then into the mythos and then therefore urban folklore of a community of being haunted.
People
because
care
maybe
less.
the first-hand people were no longer alive.
Yeah.
And then it's a part of a collective memory rather than being like a first-hand retelling. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because no
all right.
one would, no daughter of someone who was murdered in a haunted house would want to see a tour going by.
Right.
You know, like of a group of people who want to see where her mother was murdered. There's too many people too close to the incident, you know, in the 50 or so years following the, I'll say 20, 25 years or so following the incident. But once you get, a few generations past, you care a little less.
How far back, Nathan, would you care about a relative being murdered and featured in a haunted house story? Like, how many generations are we talking?
Okay.
Like, obviously
I'm
not grandparent. I think that's a little too close to
Too
home.
close. And I'm blessed enough to still have my grandparents. So like I definitely would say for me that's too close. Their parents though, I didn't know any great grandfather. Of the four of them, I didn't
That's
know
fair
a great
game.
grandfather. I think that's fair game.
What
I
about
think
you,
the first great is absolutely.
I think
fair
we're
game.
there.
Dan? Yeah, I knew two of my great grandparents, and I would still think it would be fair game.
Yeah.
because I only knew them as a child. And
Because they lived in a world without electricity, and thus their nonsense made no sense.
they
here's the
are
thing.
peasant rural people who are
I
now
knew-
dead.
I knew two of my great grandmothers, but I imagine that if they passed away, if there's a story going on about them that I'm around to see, I imagine they firstly passed away when I was young. Secondly, most women involved in these are doing the haunting. Women are the ones who, after they are murdered, stick around and then cause, fear. Or
That's
haunt.
scientific fact.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That
I
it
know,
right.
they-
So
They
I
be
think
shopping. I get that.
I would be proud. I would be proud to know that one of my great grandmothers was haunting a house, and people were so compelled by it.
Why?
That they
Because
wanted
that
to
means
see
she
it.
had a tragedy in her life. You don't want to wish that on her.
Yeah,
Why?
but she's getting revenge
On what?
On
An
who?
empty
You?
Building?
on all the visitors and passersby.
She's draining their energy psychically.
That's what
Like,
She's
my-
sapping them of their sustenance.
My great grandfather was straight up murdered, like in real life. And I would be like pretty excited if he was featured in like a true crime haunted house scenario. Like,
Yeah.
I would probably go out of my way to see that.
Yeah, that'd be kind of cool. Yeah, I don't know. It's not pride, obviously, because that's weird to have pride in. But it's an
Sure,
interesting it's an interesting family story to tell. And if it's that
Yeah.
far removed from you, you're okay telling it because there's no actual emotion related.
Yeah.
Well, I've got three things then, real quick. I'm going to name three different places, and I want you guys to classify it as haunted attraction or tragedy tourism.
Okay.
All right, these are going to be easy. So first, Auschwitz.
Tragedy tourism.
Tragedy tourism.
Like, easy.
Okay, so why?
Do I also think Auschwitz is probably incredibly haunted? Absolutely. But I think
But
that
different.
it is too recent to have that attachment, and it probably never will have a haunted tour attached to it.
I think that for me, it's back to my earlier point about hearsay versus fact. And I think that there's too much documentation about what happened in that area for it to ever become legend. It's just history and
Yeah,
a tragic moment in history.
But and that's the beauty of this is you're right. It is history, but legends will grow in the cracks of history, right? So
yeah, but the
while
cracks of that, but the
Auschwitz
wall will
itself-
still stand there. And
no,
it
I
still
understand.
burns
Auschwitz
Jews.
itself is well noted. Everyone knows what happened there, but then maybe stories of hauntings come in time of like,
Yeah.
oh, I started seeing these floating globes.
I
right?
wouldn't
like
be surprised if that was indeed incredibly haunted because that's so much negative energy and so much tragedy in one compound area that I don't think it could help but to be haunted. And,
Yeah, I think
but I don't know
right.
if like if in our lifetimes even that there would ever be like a tour to talk about the ghosts there rather than like the historical fact because it
Yeah.
was such a
Okay.
momentous event.
Especially
Fair.
Auschwitz specifically. Like,
Yeah.
I think there might be areas that are like World War II haunted area, right? That you can go visit in Germany, but Auschwitz specifically, I think,
Yeah.
will remain to be a tragic, representative place.
Okay, ready for number 2?
Yep.
Yep.
Do it.
The dungeons of Warwick Castle.
Haunted.
Ha-
Haunted tour. Fun
Haunted.
time.
Even though we're talking the dungeons where you literally have the vehicles of torture
Yeah.
laid in front of you.
That is 100% haunted ghost tour material because everyone involved in that is long dead, as are their direct and then indirect descendants.
As is the fear that people might find themselves still in that dungeon or being tortured by the devices in that dungeon. I think the use of all the tools down there is also sort of obsolete. So,
Sure. I don't think many people are put into Iron Maidens
They're not.
anymore. You are correct.
I think
so-
that the enjoyment of merry old England, and that is spelled MERRIE and then OLDE England, combines with the medieval torture things to make for one hell of a ghost tour. And if you put a big fat guy like with turkey leg giving that tour, like I will give that man extra money.
Okay. All right. You ready for the third one?
yeah.
Alcatraz Prison.
I think that is a true crime tour and not a ghost tour, which is very different. I think
Nathan,
there
what were
if
you
there's
about
a
to say?
I'm
if-
torn.
if there is a
think that's
Venn
haunted.
diagram of people that like ghosts and people that like true crime, that there might be one. Let's say that there's 3 companies that do tours of Alcatraz. I bet that there's 2 true crimes and then like an after hours ghost one, but it's not that good.
Well, but it's not. But it's not a tragedy tour. It's not tragedy tourism, right? Because I'm not.
I mean, it is. It was a horrible prison full of horrible people.
I think it depends on how much you know about Alcatraz as to your intention of going there. So if I go there because I know so much about Alcatraz, how horrible it was, and I just want to go there to experience where all of these people were put through the worst years of their life, that's tragedy tourism. If I just heard that there's a prison on an island in California, that just sounds like a haunted place, and maybe I want to go experience the ghost tour there. So it's almost about intention.
Yeah. But I think that like an Al Capone junkie is more likely to go to that than like a ghost junkie would.
True. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that wraps up my discussion. So thank you guys so much for joining. Hopefully, if you have anything to add on Twitter, remember, we are at GoFolkPodcast. Tweet us with your own places that you'd like us to determine whether or not it is a haunted event or tragedy tourism, as we are now experts on the subject, as well as experts at giving you medical and legal advice.
Yeah, I would
So-
I would like to say just one more time that the views of this podcast do not necessarily represent the views of GFY LLC. They do, however, directly represent the views of Victor.
Oh, okay.
Okay, good.
Well, we got that.
Yeah,
That's good.
So go ahead
But
and
yeah.
write us a review or like our post, but make sure you're doing all that stuff while you're driving, people. Like that's very
Yes.
important.
Yes, that's what Victor wanted you to know more than anything, was that you need to be driving while you A, tweet at us, B, follow us on Apple Podcasts, and C, write a review with 5 stars.
And
all
listen.
while driving.
Two beers does not a drunk make, okay? Especially when it comes to vehicles. Everybody knows that. The first 2 are gimmies.
No contest.
All right, well, good night, everybody. And remember, go fuck yourself.
He said the thing.